these were my questions. Now you get to ask me the last question.
The final question. It's the final question. All right, let me look back at my list. How do you think that I think we were together in saying, okay, the left has become a bit confused maybe, or not so effective recently in comparison to what a leftist position might have been in the early 20th century, the mid 20th century, of like hardcore, like communist revolution, socialist revolution, fight against the capitalist pigs.
Yeah.
Bippity boppity. How do you think the left can become relevant again for today, or how can it make a comeback to make it really this strong counter movement to the alt-right or capitalism, liberalism?
I think it's actually quite simple. They need to do two things that they're like terrified from doing.
Okay.
They need to reject liberalism and they need to adopt populism.
Okay.
I think that's the only way. I think actually Bernie Sanders in the States was very close to getting there. Of course, he was completely stumped by the Democratic establishment twice in a row.
What a ridiculous thing.
Yeah. I think the same thing happened in France when you had, like, for example, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who was an actual contender for the position of presidency, but like the leftists preferred the liberal Macron, and we see the result. I think the left should understand that, okay, we're smaller now than we used to be, but it doesn't mean we have to make a political alliance with the liberals. And it doesn't mean, and like we should represent the populists. We should represent the people. We should represent the working class. We shouldn't be afraid of being populist. We shouldn't be afraid of actually representing like normal people's day-to-day problems. Even if some of these people are racist, it doesn't mean, like racist or whatever, or like some things that the left doesn't like. It doesn't mean we can't work together for some shared goals, for the better good of people. Like, yeah, this is what I think the left should do, basically.
So it's more, you think it's like they could make a return to solidarity politics?
Yeah.
In this very, very general sense, like try to build a very strong popular coalition that's politically viable.
Yeah.
That really can elect representatives to the government.
Yeah. I mean, they don't even have to be in the government. Like, they can also be an effective opposition. But in order to be an effective opposition, you need to raise some popular issues. Not only, I mean, I'm sorry, like, I have no issue with, like, LGBT people. Like, of course, they deserve rights and everything, but, like, these are minor issues. Like, I'm sorry, like, there are much grander issues that are related to like asset distribution and class and technology and social issues that are much more important than the rights of like some minor groups in society. And I think like some of these issues of like minor groups in society, some of them, not all of them, but like some of them will be resolved once we resolve these grander issues of like resource inequality. Like I mean, we talked about like Georgism, for example, right?
Georgism,
like Henry George in the United States. Like I think he was from the like. I'm not even sure about the timeline. I think he's from the 19th century, but he basically advocated of like abolishing all taxes, except for like land value tax, like only taxing the land, which means that like, and it doesn't matter, like you're taxed for the land itself, right? Not for the like the added value you have for that tax. So if you have like a 1 acre of land and it has nothing on it, but or if you have a 1 acre of land and you have a mall on it, like you will be taxed the same. But this gives people who own land incentive to actually develop these lands, and on the other hand, people who have too much land to maybe sell some of it. And I think, for example, this would be like very popular if the left would start like proposing it as a serious policy that they would like to implement. So I think, yeah, like thinking of like how to bring up policies that would still be leftist in concept, right? But that will serve as many people as possible.
Yeah, if I can paraphrase, maybe we should say for the viewers out there, the racism obviously very, very bad, and the rights of minorities and the protection of minority groups should be worked for.
Yeah,
but perhaps there's a way to accomplish these goals and at the same time create a greater coalition that's not only focusing on minority issues, but to try to put it under the umbrella of class issues.
Yeah, and also I think that like neoliberal identity politics doesn't help. It only creates more hate. It doesn't solve these social issues. I think it's generated more racism than actually solved racism. So, like, I think, yeah, like you have like a revival of the Ku Klux Klan today in the States. Like, who would imagine that in the 60s?
Yeah, I mean, I remember in this, like, what was it, 2015 or 2014, there was these like KKK or alt-right marches in like the Carolinas. Oh man, it was
and this
shocking.
is like reactionary. This is like reactionary politics, like reacting to the leftist identity politics. Like, we should leave liberalism. Like the liberals, like all the Joe Bidens of the world, they should do like their own thing. Like we shouldn't care. We shouldn't care about the liberals because the liberals have only brought us like more inequality, more chaos, more like social instability. Like we don't need them.
I mean, my interpretation of the kind of identity politics is that on the one hand, it's very, very difficult to have real measurable goals, or not that, but like to like measure the results in a way, because it's so much about like attitude towards treating people.
Yeah.
That because of that core, it's kind of hard to like concretize what the movement like materially can accomplish or should accomplish. I mean, of course, you could say like, awareness, better treatment, more compassion, more acceptance of particular groups, A, maybe. But you can't legislate that. You can't force people to do that.
No,
of course, the discourse does work.
I mean, now it's completely ridiculous, right? Because in every form you fill in the States, you have to fill in your race and your gender, which are like, this is fake. Like race and gender are like social constructs. Why do we need to fill up like these like fake social constructs in government papers? It doesn't make any sense. And this comes from the liberals. Like, why?
It's almost like they never read the Cyborg Manifesto from Donna Haraway, which says exactly this. That like actually, I mean, she's coming from the 70s away to unite different branches of feminism that were a bit like fighting.
Yeah.
To say like, actually, we're all these cyborg like constructed identities from so many different sources. Why can't we unify around this?
Yeah.
Our patchwork nature of identity, for example.
Exactly. But also like this is a social thing. It doesn't need to be controlled by the government. Why do we give the government more power over the way we identify ourselves? This is so stupid.
I think this is an issue that should be raised. And for me, what I've seen in, between like 2012 when I became a bit more aware of these issues, when I went to university, I ended high school, and then now is a lot of the times, a big corporation can just appropriate the terms, slap some diversity in their advertising, and continue their activities as normal. And I don't think that accomplishes much.
Yeah, and this is also the reason the right is, the political right is winning, because they already understood that neoliberalism doesn't fall through on their promises. They lie to us, and they rob our money, and they rob our resources, and they completely crumble society, and like society is way more fragile than it used to be. And the right understand this, and I think if the left wants to be in power again, they have to reject neoliberalism.
I think this is why it's in a way important to take people from the right seriously, very, very seriously what they say, because they're reacting to something very real. Yeah. And it's a very honest way of reacting. From my perspective, they choose the wrong solutions.
Yeah, for sure. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm hearing Steve Bannon, and like when he talks about the facts, like he doesn't say anything that is false, just like his interpretation of reality is like completely strange. Like I don't think the Great Replacement is a thing, right? Like I don't think the elites actually want to replace like white people with immigrants, but like in practice we see that this is what is happening, and if we don't want this to happen, we need to think of like viable solutions.
Yes, for me, this has personally been a point where I have a hard time kind of like identifying so strongly with a lot of like popular leftist discourse, because I feel like they oftentimes rely so much on moral arguments that I find a lack of pragmatic solutions. And I think we need them. We need to incentivize people to, I don't know, find alternative forms of social organization or government state organization, or find a way where a kind of post-state organization of society can really work within an economy that incentivizes people to do things.
Yeah, I think the post-state like part is the important part.
This is crazy.
I think people don't trust the state. They don't trust the elites.
Yep.
And I think this is actually the unifying thing. Like this is the way to unify left and right. This is the way you can unify people against this like concentration of power and resources within like the 1% that Bernie was talking. I mean,
the 99%.
Yeah, I mean, but there's no major difference between Steve Bannon and Bernie Sanders. They're talking about the same thing. Bernie called it the 1%. Steve Bannon called it the elites, but it's the same thing. Like, and once we understand that we're on the same side, we could actually get some viable solutions for the future of like most of society.
This is interesting. I mean, Zizek talks about the unholy alliances, where you have like, different sectors of society that would never come together to kind of create these monstrosities that would produce something even more sinister. But maybe this is a way of creating a holy unholy alliance. That
a holy unholy alliance.
Okay, maybe you have to listen to more country music, and there's some guy from rural Ohio, very American example, some working class person from rural Ohio or deep Alabama who, when they speak about things, you're just like, wow. I'm going to try to be respectful for the internet. I completely disagree with a few, curse words inserted.
Yeah.
But to then team up somehow, maybe there is something, I don't know. Maybe this is impossible and it's such a classic leftist idea. I prefer to not think that way, but
it's impossible as long as people stay on social media.
I agree. I think that the biggest effect of social media is polarization and complete deconstruction of communication processes.
Yep.
Because you have no way to respond as a human being.
Yeah.
You are given an algorithm and you have to you're forced to respond as an algorithm. Because the way that social media works is that it rewards the most affective, most viscerally powerful things, which are absolutely bad for discourse. Because, you see first, like, horrible images and you're like, oh my God, or you see the headline, you're like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And you can't respond to individual people in the flesh who you see and you have to smell and maybe taste, I don't know, and realize that they're complex beings with complex inner lives who are empathetic. It we'll see. I don't think so many good things about that.
To holy, unholy alliances.
To holy, unholy alliances. Delicious.